Has anyone ever written you off? Felt too weak, too small to face a challenge? Perhaps the world around you laughed at your ambitions and every door slammed shut in your face. I myself have encountered this many times when it seemed all paths were closed. But I know it's just a test, not a sentence. Today we'll tell a story that will completely change your perception of heroism. How did a man whom the system itself deemed useless become a legend? And how can hunger and destitution forge a hero whose deeds will forever be etched in history? Do you think you know what a true hero is? Forget everything you've been told. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. In June 1942, a 16-year-old boy walked into a U.S. Marine Corps recruiting office. Standing barely 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing only 110 pounds, the recruiter, without even looking up from his papers, merely scoffed. The Navy, rejected, too small. Army paratroopers. Go home and grow up, was their verdict. This young man was the living embodiment of a fatal flaw, like a fighter jet incapable of executing a turn. By all regulations, he was considered completely unfit, but the recruiters made a fatal error. They saw only a frail boy, failing to recognize the weapon forged by brutal poverty, the eyes of a hunter who had saved his family from starvation. They had no idea that standing before them was a future hero whose story would redefine human potential. That boy's name was Audie Murphy, and in just 30 months, this undersized reject would transform into a one-man army, single-handedly annihilating an entire company of German soldiers by climbing atop a burning tank, seconds away from exploding. But this incredible story doesn't begin on a blood-soaked battlefield. Its roots lie in the crushing poverty of the cotton fields of Hunt County, Texas, where fate was already preparing Audie for unimaginable trials. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Audie was the 6th of 12 children. His father, an impoverished sharecropper, abandoned the family, leaving them to fend for themselves. His mother died of pneumonia shortly after Audie turned 16. Suddenly, this 110-pound boy became the head of the household, the sole provider for his younger siblings. His primary tool became a .22 caliber rifle, and his only driving force was the unbearable hunger that threatened to consume his loved ones. A neighbor later recalled Murphy's astonishing marksmanship with amazement. The boy could shoot a running rabbit at 50 yards with a rifle most adults couldn't hit a barn with. Murphy's own words were far colder and more piercing. If I didn't hit what I was shooting at, my family didn't eat that night. This wasn't just practice, it was pure survival. Every bullet cost money the family didn't have, and every miss meant empty stomachs and despair. Under this unbearable pressure, Audie Murphy didn't just learn to shoot, he learned to kill. He developed a marksman's eye, a cold, ruthless efficiency that would one day terrorize German soldiers across 3 countries. And it was this mastery of survival that prepared him for great battles. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, Murphy saw his only chance. The army promised a steady paycheck, 3 square meals a day, and money to send home. But he was still 16, and still too scrawny to meet the standards. After being ridiculed at every other recruiting office, he went to the regular army infantry. The recruiter glanced at a forged affidavit from his sister, claiming he was 18. Then he looked at a boy who appeared closer to 14. He sighed and stamped the papers. The U.S. Army had no idea what it had just done. It had just accepted a field modification that would save hundreds of American lives by breaking every existing rule. Private First Class David Mozur, who trained with Murphy, later recalled, "We all thought he was a mascot. The drill sergeants mercilessly teased him, calling him baby. But then they got to the firing range. Those blue eyes turned cold as winter. He never missed. Not once. This was merely a prelude to what would happen when this baby confronted a real enemy. In July 1943, Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment landed in Sicily. It was there, in the rugged mountains, that the hidden truth about Murphy finally revealed itself in all its deadly glory. His rural upbringing had taught him to move silently, like a shadow. He instinctively used the terrain to his advantage, and most importantly, he shot with lethal, chilling accuracy. Near Palermo, his unit found itself pinned down by German machine gun fire. This was his first truly serious problem. Military doctrine dictated, wait for support. Murphy's doctrine, however, stated, my family doesn't eat. While the others took cover from the torrential fire, Private Murphy, the 110-pound baby, using the terrain's folds, single-handedly outflanked the enemy position. He wiped out the entire machine gun crew with grenades. Then, in an action that would define his future career, he turned their own machine gun on the retreating enemy forces, completing the rout. Captain Paul Harris recommended him for the Bronze Star, writing in the citation, "This soldier displays an extraordinary natural propensity for combat." Extraordinary was a vast understatement. Audie Murphy had just discovered something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was exceptionally good at killing, and this was just the beginning of his journey. Sicily proved to be merely a prologue to larger events. The Italian campaign was where Murphy transformed from simply a good soldier into a veritable walking nightmare for the Wehrmacht, each step leaving a trail of destroyed enemy positions. At the Volturno River in October 1943, his squad was virtually wiped out by a sudden German counterattack. Instead of retreating, Murphy grabbed a borrowed sniper rifle and single-handedly held the position. 5 German soldiers were killed from over 300 yards away. For this feat, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second-highest medal, further confirming his uniqueness. He was no longer just a soldier. He had become a force to be reckoned with. Staff Sergeant William Paulson described Murphy's method. Murph didn't fight in anger. That's what was terrifying about him. He fought cold, calculatingly, as if he were doing arithmetic. See a German, eliminate the German, move on to the next German. No emotion, no hesitation, just lethal efficiency. And this efficiency was soon demonstrated on another key sector of the front. Then came Anzio, the blood-soaked beachhead Winston Churchill called the Wildcat. The main problem? A German tank. The one thing infantry fears most confronted Murphy. He didn't just fire his bazooka from a distance. He crawled up to the tank, using the terrain, until he was at point-blank range. With a direct hit, he completely destroyed the formidable German machine. For this feat, he was awarded his first Silver Star. He had survived Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, and Rome. He had been wounded. He had been promoted to sergeant. This small farm boy now had a reputation that preceded him, but the most incredible trial and the most legendary feat was still to come. Have you ever felt the world crumbling around you, standing alone amidst its ruins, trying to hold on to what seems already lost? Do you understand that feeling when everyone else gives up and you're forced to make a decision that seems insane, yet is the only right one? Today, we will delve into a story that will make you rethink the limits of human resilience and courage. We'll tell you about a man whose name became a legend, a fighter who single-handedly defied superior enemy forces. How did he manage to stand where others fell? What drove him on that fateful day? And most importantly, what lessons can we draw from his incredible story to apply to our own lives when everything seems to be going wrong? This story isn't just about war. It's about inner strength, about how an ordinary man, once deemed too frail for enlistment, became an unbreakable barrier against an entire army. We'll discuss the moment when retreat was the only logical step, yet one man chose to defy all rules. Prepare to learn how a single individual can change the tide of an entire battle, and why, even in the most hopeless situations, there is always room for heroism. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. His reputation preceded him, like a giant's shadow, foreshadowing future deeds. However, August 1944 brought a pivotal test. Near Montélimar, France, his platoon was caught in a fierce ambush. The problem arose instantly. Their lieutenant, their commander, fell in the initial volley of fire. The chain of command was broken. Sergeant Murphy, without waiting for orders, became the embodiment of command himself. He took charge of the platoon. The situation seemed unthinkable. 18 Americans against a German company of over 100 soldiers. For 2 hours, Sergeant Murphy held a strategically vital crossroads. He led his men, exposing himself to fire, and personally eliminated 15 enemies. He held the line. The army, finally realizing the gem it had, promoted him directly on the battlefield. On October 14, 1944, the young man who was once too small to enlist became Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy. But every battle leaves its mark. By January 1945, Murphy was no longer that 16-year-old boy. He was 19 but looked 40. He had seen nearly all his comrades killed or wounded. He had personally eliminated over 100 enemy soldiers. And now he faced the Colmar Pocket. The Colmar Pocket was the last sliver of French territory remaining under Wehrmacht control. Hitler had ordered it held at all costs and dispatched his best forces there, the 2nd Mountain Division. Elite troops, veterans of harsh Norwegian winters, transferred specifically for this offensive. For Company B, the situation wasn't just desperate. It was hopeless. The numbers alone told the story. In 5 days of continuous brutal fighting, Company B had lost 102 men. All officers except Murphy were either killed or evacuated. From a full strength of 187, only 40 combat-effective men remained. Murphy himself was fighting with a fresh shrapnel wound in his leg, but he told no one. Private Anthony Abramsky described their condition. "We were exhausted. Everything was over. Most of us hadn't slept for 3 days. Half the guys had frostbite. Our machine guns were freezing up. We tried to dig foxholes, but the ground was hard as iron." On January 26, 1945, dawn was gray and piercingly cold. Company B stretched in a thin line along the edge of the Holtzwihr forest. Before them, an open, frozen mile of ground extended. They were, as Abramsky put it, sitting ducks. Murphy positioned his only anti-tank assets, 2 M10 tank destroyers. He had 40 exhausted men and a field telephone line to artillery, his only real hope. At 1 RPM, the German artillery barrage began. Shells exploding in the treetops rained down deadly, molten shrapnel onto the frozen ground. This lasted for 30 minutes. At 1:40 p.m., the attack began. Private First Class Donald Ekman saw them first. You could see the pennants on the antennas of the German tanks. 6 of them, and behind them, my God, 250 infantrymen, all in white snow camouflage, moving across the field like ghosts. Murphy's first action was to call for artillery support, but artillery alone couldn't stop this assault. The Germans were too dispersed, too numerous, moving too fast. From 600 yards, the M10 tank destroyers opened fire. Their initial shots missed. The crews were exhausted, their hands numb from the cold. The German tank's return fire was immediate and devastating. An 80mm shell struck the rear M10 directly in the turret. It burst into flames. The crew bailed out, fleeing into the woods. The front M10, attempting to maneuver, slid sideways into a drainage ditch. Its tracks couldn't find purchase on the frozen ground. Its crew abandoned it and retreated. It was 2:20 p.m. Both tank destroyers were out of action. German infantry were now closing to within 200 yards. This was the turning point, the moment the position should have been overrun. It was then that Lieutenant Murphy made a decision that defied all logic. He ordered his remaining 40 men to retreat to prepared positions deeper in the woods. "Fall back!" he yelled. But he himself did not retreat. Instead, as his men ran for cover, Lieutenant Murphy ran forward. He ran through artillery and machine gun fire. He ran towards the burning M10 tank destroyer. The rear of the vehicle was fully engulfed in flames. Black smoke billowed from the hull. At any moment, thousands of rounds of ammunition and 300 gallons of gasoline inside could detonate, transforming the machine into a massive fragmentation bomb. Murphy didn't hesitate. He climbed onto the rear of the burning, exploding tank destroyer and took a position behind its 50 caliber machine gun. From this vantage point, he was a perfect target, a lone figure silhouetted against a bomb, fully exposed to 250 rifles and 6 tanks. Private Abramsky watched from the woods. "I saw Lieutenant Murphy climb onto the burning tank destroyer. It was the greatest display of guts and courage I'd ever seen." The 50 caliber Browning is a devastating weapon. In Murphy's hands, it became an instrument of precise destruction. The hunter's eye, forged in the Texas cotton fields, took over. For the next hour, this 19-year-old, 110-pound youth became a one-man army. He didn't just fire, he calculated. In one hand, he held a field telephone, calling in artillery strikes. In the other, the trigger of the 50 caliber machine gun. He created a wall of steel. Sergeant Elmer Brawley observed from the edge of the woods. German infantrymen came within 10 yards of Lieutenant Murphy, who was killing them in the low ground, in the meadows, in the woods. Wherever he saw them, the German forces, these elite mountain troops, found themselves in an unbearable trap. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. But what happened next, as this lone hero, standing atop a blazing vehicle, held off an entire company? How long could he hold out, and what was the price of this incredible feat? And most importantly, how did this story impact his life after the war? You'll discover the continuation of his extraordinary destiny, full of unexpected twists, if you stay with us. Because what happened after that hour of hell will surprise you no less than the battle itself. Have you ever felt trapped when everything around screamed, "This is the end"? When it seems you're facing an entire army alone, and every instinct whispers to surrender. Today, we'll delve into a story that will make you rethink the limits of human endurance. The story of Audie Murphy, a simple farm boy whose name became synonymous with impossible heroism. Can one person truly change the course of a major battle when the fate of an entire campaign hangs in the balance? What compels a soldier to deliberately call artillery fire onto his own position, knowing it's certain death? And how can such an incredible event be almost erased from history, as if it never happened? Prepare to discover shocking answers. In this video, we'll reveal the details of one of the most astonishing acts of heroism in World War II, which not only saved an entire company, but also influenced the outcome of the entire campaign. And we'll start at the very moment when everything hung by a thread and German tanks surged forward, confident in their inevitable victory. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. On that fateful day, as the German assault intensified, their formidable tanks, designed to crush defensive positions in mere moments, found themselves paralyzed. They stood frozen, useless in their might, unable to advance without infantry support. And the infantry, meanwhile, was methodically annihilated by an invisible storm of bullets erupting from an impenetrable cloud of black smoke. This wasn't merely a defense. It was an unbearable trap into which the attackers had stumbled. Technical Sergeant Morris Wald, who observed the unfolding events from the battalion command post, later testified to the truly incredible effectiveness of Murphy's fire. "He wasn't just spraying bullets," Wald recalled. "Every shot he fired was precise, lethal. He was picking off German infantrymen as if on a firing range, mowing down entire squads attempting to flank our position. It was an accuracy bordering on miraculous amidst the chaos of battle. Unaccustomed to such resistance, the Germans threw everything they had into the fight. They shelled the tank destroyer with rounds. Shrapnel pierced Murphy's leg, adding a second wound to those he already sustained that day. But he paid it no mind. He simply kept firing. He simply kept calling in artillery fire, adjusting it with astonishing coolness. Stay with us and watch till the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. By 3:10 p.m., after 40 minutes of relentless, scorching fire, the 50 caliber machine gun's tempo noticeably slowed. Ammunition was running low. The Germans, like predators sensing weakness, immediately felt it and surged forward with renewed vigor. Murphy, without losing a second, grabbed his carbine and began coldly picking off the approaching soldiers one by one. The enemy was already within just 10 yards. It seemed like an inevitable end, but Murphy had not yet spoken his last word. And then Audie Murphy made the most desperate call of his life. He ordered the artillery to fire directly onto his own position. The forward observer, Lieutenant Walter Weiss-Fenning, horrified, refused. He understood perfectly that such an order meant certain death for Murphy, but Murphy didn't hesitate. He yelled into the telephone with furious rage and determination. "I am giving you a direct order! Fire on my position now!" It was an act of extreme self-sacrifice, one that was meant to change the tide of battle. The first 105mm shells landed 50 yards from his position. Explosions shook the ground, scattering frozen earth and deadly shrapnel in all directions. German infantry, caught off guard in the open, were torn apart. But Murphy, perched atop the flaming vehicle, was also at the epicenter of this firestorm. The combination of his direct fire and the artillery shells exploding around him finally broke the German attack. The surviving infantrymen, numbering around 100, panicked and fled. The tanks, stripped of all support, changed course and began a disorderly retreat. It was 3:20 p.m. In one impossible hour, the attack was completely over, leaving behind only chaos and destruction. Audie Murphy, his uniform charred and blood streaming from his leg, finally dismounted the M10 tank destroyer. Just 10 minutes after he left, the combat vehicle exploded, confirming the timeliness of his decision. He calmly, almost serenely, returned to the edge of the forest where his comrades awaited him. Private Abramsky later recalled that Murphy was frighteningly calm. His first action was to inquire about casualties, ensure everyone was all right. Then he sat down, lit a cigarette, and requested a situation report. His hands, which had just been through hell, didn't even tremble. That day, Audie Murphy single-handedly neutralized, killing or wounding approximately 50 German soldiers. He alone halted a combined assault involving 250 elite fighters and 6 tanks. He not only saved his company from imminent destruction, but also etched his name forever into the annals of military history by performing a feat that seemed impossible. The battlefield was a heart-wrenching sight. German bodies were scattered across the snow-covered fields like tragic marks on a white canvas. The elite 2nd Mountain Division, hardened veterans of campaigns in Norway, Finland, and on the Eastern Front, retreated in complete disarray, their officers powerless to rally their men for a new attack. This was not just a withdrawal, it was a true collapse of morale. But perhaps the most striking and telling detail of this story is the absolute silence surrounding it. For decades after the war, historians meticulously scoured German military archives, veteran organizations, and personal diaries, futilely trying to find any German report about that day. They found almost nothing. The near-total absence of primary sources from those who attacked Holtz is, in itself, the most powerful evidence of what Audie Murphy accomplished. The German units involved in that attack suffered approximately 50 casualties from Murphy's actions alone. Many witnesses simply did not survive the day. Furthermore, the entire German war machine was built on unwavering pride and impeccable elite training. The 2nd Mountain Division had participated in the fiercest battles, but they had never seen anything like this. The very idea that 250 of their best fighters, supported by 6 tanks, were not just defeated, but humiliated by one 110-pound American kid standing on a burning tank was such a shameful tactical defeat that they preferred to simply erase it from their memory and records. It was incomprehensible. It didn't fit their military doctrine, nor their world view. It exposed a fatal flaw in their own seemingly flawless logic of war. The official German war diary for that day contained a blatant lie. It stated, "The attack on American positions near Holtz was repulsed with heavy losses. Enemy resistance proved stronger than expected." Stronger than expected. This phrase concealed the truth. The resistance was one man. They had encountered someone who was simply better than them at the art of war. And this shocking realization broke something fundamental in their martial identity. Their tactical plan was flawless. Their equipment was superior. Their soldiers were elite. And one farm boy, with what they might have thought was a foolish idea, shattered it all. The hunter became the hunted. Audie Murphy's steadfastness had consequences that extended far beyond an immediate tactical victory. It wasn't just about saving Company B, it was a domino effect that had a huge impact across the entire front. The successful defense of the Holtz Forest, a position Murphy refused to yield, effectively broke the back of German resistance throughout Alsace. The Germans' inability to break through meant that the days of the Colmar pocket were numbered. Holtzwihr itself, the village they were trying to defend, fell to the Allies the very next day. Within weeks, the entire German bridgehead west of the Rhine was eliminated, taking 50,000 German soldiers out of the war and freeing Allied forces for the final assault on Germany. One small farm boy had just changed the map of the war. On June 2, 1945, near Salzburg, Austria, Lieutenant General Alexander Patch officially presented 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy with the nation's highest military award, the Medal of Honor. The official citation, usually concise in military documents, struggles to convey the full grandeur and inconceivable reality of that day. It reads, "He was alone and subjected to German fire from 3 sides, but his deadly fire killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to waver. For an hour, the Germans used every available means to eliminate 2nd Lieutenant Murphy, but he continued to hold his position." Imagine a man who knew no fear. His name became synonymous with courage, and his exploits formed the basis of legends. He single-handedly defied the enemy, saving his friends, and emerged victorious from the most hellish battles. But what if the most terrifying battle awaited him not on the battlefield but in the quiet of his own home? What if the real hell began when everyone else was celebrating victory? Many of us have faced situations where an external victory did not bring inner peace. When seemingly all obstacles are behind you, but something far more insidious begins to brew within. We know that feeling when the world expects perfection from you, but you're battling invisible demons. Perhaps you or someone close to you has experienced something similar. When outwardly everything is fine, but inwardly a storm rages. Today we will tell the story of just such a person, who not only survived, but was able to transform his pain into an invaluable gift for thousands of others. In this video, we will delve into the incredible life of Audie Murphy, the most decorated American soldier of World War II, whose fate proved far more complex than a Hollywood script. We will ask, how could a man whose name echoed worldwide become a prisoner of his own nightmares, fearing the darkness of his own home? Why, after reaching the heights of fame and wealth, did he die in debt? And who was the unsung hero who took up his banner? And most importantly, how did his struggle change the understanding of what it means to be a hero after the war? Forget the usual hero narratives where the end credits mean a happy ending. What we will show you will break the mold and make you reflect on the true cost of victory. This is a story not only about valor on the front lines, but also about the courage needed to fight an invisible enemy that people preferred to keep silent about back then. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And, of course, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Murphy's own words were, as always, direct and unpretentious. When asked what made him climb onto the flaming tank destroyer, why he undertook this seemingly reckless act, his answer was painfully simple. They were killing my friends. He later added that it was not an act of heroic self-sacrifice at all. I reasoned, he said, if one man can do the job, why risk the lives of others? This revealed his practical mindset, akin to jury-rigging a solution, not for glory or acclaim, but to eliminate a deadly threat, to find an effective solution. To this day, his military record remains unparalleled among American service members. He was awarded every combat award for valor the United States Army could bestow, some of them twice. Among his 33 awards were the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. Additionally, he received 5 awards from the governments of France and Belgium. This young man, who was initially deemed too short to serve in the Marine Corps, ultimately became the most decorated American soldier of all World War II. World War II in the European theater of operations concluded. The roar of cannons fell silent. Audie Murphy returned home. He was greeted as a true national hero. His face graced the cover of the prestigious Life magazine. Triumphant parades were held in his honor. Soon, he was invited to Hollywood, where he managed to build a successful film career, starring in over 40 movies, including his famous autobiographical film To Hell and Back, where he played himself. To the general public, this seemed like the perfect Hollywood ending, an absolute rags-to-riches success story. A simple farm boy from Texas who defeated the Nazis became a wealthy and celebrated movie star. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. However, the narrative of Audie Murphy by no means ends here. This is where his true, invisible war begins, that missing page in his legendary biography. The general public saw only Audie Murphy, the invincible hero, but no one noticed the fatal flaw that the war had permanently left deep within him. The man who hadn't flinched on a burning tank under intense fire now experienced panic-inducing terror at ordinary darkness. Murphy's post-war struggle with what was then called combat fatigue is today unequivocally identified as severe post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. He suffered from agonizing chronic insomnia, tormented by recurring nightmares, and was in a state of constant hypervigilance, which forced him to sleep with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He was haunted by the ghosts of the past. Notably, these were not the ones he had killed, but those he couldn't save. His mind constantly returned to the faces of his fallen friends. Audie physically survived the war, but his mind never truly left that fateful battlefield. Ultimately, the situation escalated to such a degree that he couldn't even sleep in his own home. Audie moved to the garage, where he could only fall asleep with the lights on, as the utter darkness relentlessly brought him back to memories of night patrols and combat duties. I don't remember a time when I wasn't tormented by nightmares, Murphy wrote in his memoirs. They became an integral part of my life, like breathing. It felt as if a demon had possessed my body. This internal struggle inevitably impacted his personal life. His first marriage to actress Wanda Hendricks lasted only 16 months, completely shattered by the effects of his post-traumatic stress disorder. Hendricks later described that two different people seemed to live within him. By day, he could be charming, cheerful, and generous, but with the onset of night, he transformed into an entirely different person. He patrolled the house with a loaded weapon, reliving battles from years ago over and over. The war had ended for all of America, but for Audie Murphy, it continued. He was fighting a new, invisible enemy that couldn't be defeated with a rifle. And this personal front soon turned into a public mission. Despite all his personal suffering, Murphy became one of the pioneers and crucial public figures in advocating for veterans' mental health. In the 1960s, he resolutely pushed through bureaucratic obstacles, daring to speak publicly about his nightmares, insomnia, and inner demons. In that post-war era, this was akin to another foolish act. At a time when combat fatigue was often perceived as a sign of weakness or cowardice, America's greatest hero stood up and openly declared, "I suffer from this." He was once again on the front lines, but on a different front, exposing a problem that the establishment stubbornly ignored. In the pages of the Saturday Evening Post, he asked rhetorical but poignant questions. What about the veteran who can't cope? What about the thousands returning from Vietnam with similar issues? He was no longer fighting for Company B. Now his battle was for all veterans. But in this new war, he was not alone. In 1951, he married Pamela Archer, and it is here that another equally important and often overlooked page in the legend of Audie Murphy is revealed. She is another, no less significant hero of this story. Pamela, a 31-year-old former airline stewardess, possessed the unique ability to see two Audies, the hero and his inner demon. Unlike many others, she did not retreat. Pamela Murphy provided the world with invaluable insight into what remained hidden from public view. Audie carried invisible wounds that never healed. He would wake up screaming in the night, reliving battles from 2 decades ago over and over, yet he never stopped trying to help other veterans. The war for Audie never ended, but he managed to transform his unbearable pain into a meaningful purpose. For 2 decades, Pamela remained by his side. She became his unwavering support, his personal countermeasure against the chaos raging in his own mind. She helped him raise 2 sons, bravely endured the night terrors, and fully supported his advocacy work. She was a true crew chief for the hero who continued his invisible war. Then on May 28, 1971, something incredible happened. Audie Murphy, a man who had survived all the unimaginable horrors of war, who, by all accounts, should have died at least 20 times on that flaming tank, passed away at the age of 45. Not in battle, but in a private plane crash in the mountains of Virginia, caught in a severe storm. America mourned its greatest hero. However, for Pamela Murphy, the true mission was just beginning. Audie had dedicated his life to fighting for his comrades. Now Pamela intended to spend the rest of her days fighting for them. For 2 decades, she had seen the fatal consequences of PTSD up close, and now she was determined to rectify this injustice by revealing a new, shocking truth. After Audie's passing in 1971, the world discovered another, previously overlooked page of his life. The most decorated soldier in American history, a man who had achieved Hollywood stardom, died leaving behind massive debts. Poor investments and the dishonesty of others left his estate, and with it his wife Pamela, virtually penniless. She was left a 50-year-old widow with 2 teenage sons to raise and a mountain of her late husband's debts. This became her personal Kalma pocket, her unbearable, seemingly hopeless situation. The world expected her to simply disappear, becoming merely a tragic footnote in the hero's grand story. But society forgot who she truly was. She was a woman who had stood shoulder to shoulder with Audie Murphy for 20 years. She had faced his demons with him. She was a born warrior herself. And now, a completely new mission lay before her. Audie's war had ended. Her war was just beginning. The hero's quiet legacy. How one woman changed the war. Have you ever heard of a man who single-handedly stopped an entire army? What if we told you that his feat, which astonished the world, was just the beginning of a much larger story that continued for decades after the guns fell silent? Today, we will unveil an incredible saga of courage, dedication, and quiet strength that revolutionized the understanding of heroism. We will delve into how one seemingly reckless act on the battlefield spawned an unprecedented legacy that changed the lives of thousands. And most importantly, we will reveal how the woman behind America's greatest hero found her own way to wage war without firing a single shot. Perhaps you have already encountered situations where the system seemed unbeatable and bureaucracy an impenetrable wall. You felt lost, forgotten, as if your voice simply isn't heard. Imagine that you are not alone in this struggle. Imagine that someone who has been through unimaginable trials, who has lost the most precious things, decided to dedicate their life to ensuring no one else faces a similar predicament. This is what our story is about. It's about how seemingly simple actions, driven by deep compassion, can change the world. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Pamela Murphy, the widow of Audie Murphy, America's greatest hero, didn't write tell-all books or sell her husband's medals. Instead, she went to the Sepulveda Veterans Administration Hospital in Los Angeles and asked for a job. Without using her name or requesting a high position, she took a simple clerk position, acting as a liaison with patients. This was her own jury-rigged solution, her personal climb onto the burning tank. For the next 35 years, Pamela Murphy dedicated herself to Audie's other war, coming to the hospital every day, occupying her small desk, and becoming a one-woman army for veterans no one else was listening to. Like a skilled mechanic, she discovered a fatal flaw in the system. Before her eyes, veterans broken by Vietnam passed through, suffering from the same combat fatigue that haunted her husband. She saw them drowning in bureaucratic quagmires. Their files were lost, their benefits denied, appointments cancelled. These people were living ghosts of her husband, and Pamela Murphy was not about to abandon them. She became their tireless advocate, the crucial link in the broken control cable of the Veterans Affairs system. Using her calm dignity and the deep moral authority that her name carried, she cut through the bureaucracy. When a doctor refused to see a veteran, she made the call. When a benefits check was lost in the mail, she found it. When an official told a veteran no, Pamela Murphy would go to their office and wouldn't leave until that no turned into a yes. She treated every veteran, whether a forgotten homeless soldier in the hallway or a decorated colonel, with equal respect. In each of them, she saw her husband's face, his pain, his struggle. She was Audie's last and most potent embodiment. She wasn't just preserving his memory, she was completing his mission. The Audie L. Murphy Memorial Veterans Hospital in San Antonio, Texas, was named in his honor in 1973. But Pamela was his living monument, a 35-year testament to the promise to leave no one behind. However, this legacy, this 35-year mission, was only possible because of what happened on that frozen field. This leaves one final question, which we will certainly uncover. How? How could one 19-year-old kid weighing just over 110 pounds with shrapnel in his leg accomplish something so incredible? This wasn't magic, nor a scene from a movie. It was a perfect storm of 4 factors: precisely those that defined the wire solution: a brilliant mechanic, a fatal flaw, a foolish innovation, and a crazy outcome. The first factor was the weapon. The 50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun, designed by John Browning in 1980 and Anu Adrian Tynant, was arguably the best heavy machine gun of World War II. Its 50 BMG round could penetrate an inch of armor plating. Each round possessed destructive energy capable of tearing a human body apart. It was reliable and didn't jam in the cold. In the hands of an ordinary soldier, it was a terrifying suppression weapon. But in Audie Murphy's hands, it was a scalpel. He didn't just spray bullets. He aimed. He employed the cold arithmetic he'd mastered hunting rabbits in Hunt County. As Sergeant Wald testified, he picked them off like a shooting gallery. One shot, one target. See a German. Eliminate a German. The weapon was perfect, but the man wielding it was a true master. The second factor was the utterly absurd location, that burning M10 tank destroyer itself. For the Germans, it represented a deadly trap, a bomb. For Murphy, it was the perfect McKenna's solution. He understood the machine's hidden truth. What Murphy knew, and the Germans didn't, was precisely how it was burning. The M10 carried 300 gallons of diesel fuel and 51 rounds of 3-inch high explosive ammunition stored in its hull. The German 88mm shell had struck the fuel, not the ammunition. The vehicle was a bomb, but its fuse was slow. More importantly, the thick black smoke from the diesel fire provided a perfect smoke screen. The Germans knew the fire was coming from the smoke, but couldn't get a clear shot at the man inside it. Murphy was effectively fighting from a burning fortress that, as he well knew, could explode at any second. It was an extremely foolish act, and it was tactical genius. The third factor was the force multiplier, and this is the part many overlook. Murphy wasn't just a one-man army. He was a one-man fire control center. Firing the 50 caliber with one hand, he held a field telephone to his ear with the other. He was calling in 105mm howitzer rounds from his artillery miles away. He was multiplying his firepower 1,000-fold. The Germans weren't just fleeing his machine gun. They were fleeing a sky that was exploding around them, directed by the man hidden in the smoke. This is what ultimately, and with the most desperation, led to his famous command, "Fire on my position." He was willing to sacrifice himself to use his last and greatest weapon, artillery, to finish the job. And the fourth and most crucial factor was the hunter. Military scientists tried to calculate the odds, considering 250 infantrymen, 6 tanks, machine guns, mortars. It's estimated that over 10,000 rounds were fired at Murphy's position during that hour. Statistical models suggest he should have been wounded 15 to 20 times. He was wounded only once by a fragment from an exploding shell. This wasn't just luck. It was the preternatural skill of a Texas rabbit hunter. He understood how to remain unseen. He understood the one-shot, one-kill principle. He became, as he himself said, a killing machine. Dr. Dave Grossman, an expert in combat psychology, offered the following analysis. Murphy represented a perfect storm. He possessed the technical skills acquired from hunting, the motivation born of poverty, emotional detachment from early trauma, and, most importantly, a protective instinct towards his men that outweighed his own instinct for self-preservation. He wasn't fighting for America. He wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting for his friends. This is the story of a foolish act that changed the war. A small boy rejected by the Marines. The fatal flaw of a 110-pound guy becoming the U.S. Army's secret weapon. The wire solution. Climbing onto a burning tank, leading to the crazy outcome of stopping an entire German army. His true legacy, his great impact, is twofold. First, he broke the stigma of PTSD because Audie Murphy said he had it. Because America's greatest hero admitted he was haunted by ghosts. Thousands of other veterans felt for the first time that they could seek help. He gave them permission to be human. Second, there's Pamela Murphy. She worked at that veterans hospital until she was 87, finally retiring in 2007. She never remarried. When she died in 2010, she was buried next to him in Arlington National Cemetery. The mechanic reunited with her pilot. The world saw a hero. Pamela saw a man. Recruiters saw a fatal flaw. The army found a secret weapon. The Germans saw an unbearable situation. Audie Murphy saw a problem to be solved. It all comes down to one fact, the one that makes this the greatest untold page of the war. A 110-pound farm boy, too small to be a soldier, became the man who stopped an army to save his friends. And in doing so, he and the wife who loved him saved thousands more lives long after the guns fell silent.